Judge slams Purple Heart on desk like garbage. Fake. This woman never saw combat. Elena Rodriguez sits stone cold calm, 20 years of silence about to explode. Then the courtroom doors burst open. Every head spins. Secret Service, on your guard. The most powerful man in America walking straight toward her. Your Honor, we need to talk about Captain Rodriguez. Elena's hands rest steady on a polished table. 20 years of keeping quiet about her service. 20 years of letting people underestimate her. 20 years of choosing civilian life over military recognition. But some insults demand a response. What happens next will end a federal judge's career and remind everyone why you never question a warrior's medals. The medal had been submitted as character evidence. Simple procedure in Elena's wrongful termination lawsuit against defense contractor Morrison Industries. Her lawyer thought military service would establish credibility with the jury. Just basic background information. Nobody expected Judge Hardwell to question the authenticity of her Purple Heart. Your Honor, I have complete documentation. Elena's attorney began. Documentation can be forged. Counselor, I've seen plenty of stolen valor cases in this courtroom. Women claiming combat roles they never held, medals they never earned. Elena's jaw tightened imperceptibly. In the gallery, several people shifted uncomfortably. Her former Marine colleagues had warned her this might happen. Civilian courts didn't always understand military service, especially when it came to women in combat roles. Miss Rodriguez, please stand and explain to this court exactly how you allegedly earned this medal. Elena rose slowly. For 2 decades, she'd avoided this conversation. After leaving the Marines, she'd chosen anonymity over recognition, private sector work over veteran benefits, a quiet life over the attention that came with her service record. But Judge Hardwell had just made that choice for her. Your Honor, I received the Purple Heart for wounds sustained during Operation Enduring Freedom, Afghanistan, 2003. Wounds sustained how, exactly? Elena's voice remained level. I'd explosion during a convoy escort mission outside Kandahar province. And you were what, exactly? A supply clerk. Administrative personnel? The courtroom grew quieter. Elena's attorney looked worried. This wasn't how character evidence was supposed to work. Judges didn't typically interrogate military service records during civil proceedings. No, Your Honor. I was a Force Reconnaissance Marine. Judge Hardwell's eyebrows raised mockingly. Force Recon? Really? And I suppose you'll tell me you saw heavy combat action? I served 3 tours in Afghanistan, 14 confirmed enemy KIA. Multiple direct action missions behind enemy lines. Miss Rodriguez, I find it highly unlikely that a woman of your appearance served in such a capacity. Force Reconnaissance is an elite unit. They don't typically accept. The courtroom doors opened. Every head turned toward the sound of formal military footsteps on marble floor. Dress blue uniforms. Honor guard formation. The unmistakable sound of authority entering the room. Judge Hardwell's words died in his throat. The man walking down the center aisle wore a dark navy suit with an American flag pin on his lapel. Secret Service agents flanked him. Behind them, a full Marine honor guard in dress blues. The kind of security detail that accompanies exactly one person in America. President James Morrison stepped into Federal Courtroom 7. Your Honor, the President's voice carried easily through the silent courtroom. I apologize for interrupting these proceedings, but I understand there's been some question about Captain Rodriguez's service record. Judge Hardwell's face had gone completely white. His hand shook as he set down Elena's Purple Heart. Mr. President, This is highly irregular. What's irregular, Your Honor, is questioning the authenticity of medals earned by one of America's finest warriors. The President walked directly to Elena's table. She snapped to attention automatically. Muscle memory overriding 20 years of civilian life. At ease, Captain. Elena relaxed slightly, but her bearing remained military perfect. The President turned to address Judge Hardwell directly. Your Honor, Captain Elena Rodriguez didn't just earn that Purple Heart. She earned it saving the lives of 12 Marines when her convoy was ambushed by Taliban forces. She earned it by continuing to fight with shrapnel in her leg and a concussion that should have knocked her unconscious. The courtroom remained dead silent. But that's not why I'm here today. President Morrison reached into his jacket and withdrew a small blue box. The kind of box that holds military decorations most people only see in museums. I'm here because 20 years ago, Captain Rodriguez was also awarded the Navy Cross for extraordinary heroism in combat. She never received it because she was recovering from her wounds in a German military hospital. When she was finally discharged, she chose not to attend the ceremony. Said she didn't need recognition for doing her job. Elena's eyes widened. In 20 years, she'd never known about the Navy Cross. Never knew her actions that day had been deemed worthy of the nation's second highest military decoration. Captain Rodriguez spent 18 months in combat zones, conducting reconnaissance missions that provided intelligence for major coalition operations. She saved more American lives than most people will ever know about. And she did it all while being told by people like you, Your Honor, that women couldn't handle combat roles. The President opened the blue box, revealing the Navy Cross Medal. "Mr. President," Elena whispered, "I don't need a yes, you do. Because 20 years ago, you were told that receiving this medal would make you a target for people who questioned women in combat. You were advised to keep your service record classified to avoid controversy. You chose silence over recognition to serve your country's interests." President Morrison pinned the Navy Cross to Elena's jacket. But silence in the face of ignorance is no longer serving anyone's interests. Judge Hartwell had been completely silent for 3 minutes. His face showed a mixture of horror, embarrassment, and the growing realization that his judicial career had just ended on live television. "Your Honor," the President continued, "Captain Rodriguez's service record is not classified. It never was. A simple phone call to the Pentagon would have confirmed everything she told you. Instead, you chose to publicly humiliate a war hero based on your personal assumptions about what women can or cannot accomplish in military service." The President turned back to Elena. "Captain, I have a question for you." "Yes, Mr. President." "After everything you've sacrificed for this country, after being wounded in its service, after earning decorations most Marines never receive, why did you choose to remain silent about your military record for 20 years? Elena considered the question carefully. Around the courtroom, reporters were frantically taking notes. Camera crews had somehow materialized. This was no longer a simple civil lawsuit. It had become a national moment. "Mr. President, I served because it was my duty, not for recognition. When I left the Marines, I wanted to succeed in civilian life based on my abilities, not my military service. I thought staying quiet about my record would allow me to be judged on my current work, not my past accomplishments." "And how did that work out for you?" Elena glanced at Judge Hartwell, who was still staring at the Navy Cross on her jacket with an expression of complete horror. "Not particularly well, sir." The President smiled grimly. "Captain, there's something else you should know about why I'm here today." He gestured toward his Secret Service detail. One of the agents stepped forward and handed him a thick manila folder. "Morrison Industries, the company you're suing for wrongful termination, is a defense contractor that provides services to military installations worldwide. They fired you, according to their own internal documents, because they felt your aggressive management style was inappropriate for a woman in a leadership position." Elena's attorney looked stunned. This information hadn't been in any of the discovery materials. What they didn't realize is that your aggressive management style was exactly what their Pentagon contracts required. Military precision, zero tolerance for safety violations, the kind of leadership that keeps people alive in high-risk environments. The President opened the folder and began reading. "In the 18 months since you were terminated, Morrison Industries has lost 3 major Pentagon contracts due to safety violations and missed deadlines. Violations and delays that never occurred when you were managing their operations." Judge Hartwell finally found his voice. "Mr. President, while I appreciate, obviously Captain Rodriguez's service record is. But this is still a civil proceeding and, Your Honor, this proceeding is concluded." The voice came from the back of the courtroom. Chief Judge Margaret Chen walked down the aisle, her face showing the kind of controlled anger that comes from watching a colleague destroy decades of judicial credibility in 15 minutes. "Judge Hartwell, you're hereby recused from this case due to demonstrated bias and conduct unbecoming a federal judge." "Captain Rodriguez, on behalf of the federal judiciary, I apologize for the unconscionable treatment you've received in this courtroom." Judge Hartwell's career ended with those words. Elena would later learn that his questioning of her military service had been broadcast live on court television. Legal analysts would spend weeks explaining how a federal judge had violated every principle of judicial conduct in a single afternoon. But the story doesn't end with Judge Hardwell's downfall. 3 months later, Elena Rodriguez was appointed as the new Director of Veterans Affairs, Military Transition Services. Her first initiative was establishing protocols to ensure that veterans' service records were properly verified and respected in civilian legal proceedings. 6 months after that, Morrison Industries offered her a settlement of $2.3 million and the position of Chief Executive Officer. She accepted the settlement and declined the CEO position. She had other plans. Elena used the settlement money to establish the Rodriguez Foundation, providing legal assistance to veterans facing discrimination in civilian workplaces. The foundation's motto, "Your service matters, your voice matters, your silence is no longer required." Judge Hartwell was removed from the federal bench and is currently working as a public defender in rural Montana, where his opinions about women in military service are less frequently solicited. President Morrison's impromptu courtroom visit became the subject of a Netflix documentary called The Purple Heart Judge, which won an Emmy for outstanding documentary programming. But the most important outcome was smaller and more personal. 3 weeks after the courtroom incident, Elena received a handwritten letter from a young woman named Sarah Chen, a recent Marine Corps veteran who had been afraid to list her military service on job applications because of concerns about discrimination. "Captain Rodriguez," the letter read, "I saw what happened in that courtroom on the news. I wanted you to know that your courage to stand up and speak about your service has inspired me to stop hiding mine. I'm applying for positions that match my actual qualifications, not the ones I thought civilians would accept. Thank you for showing me that silence isn't always the honorable choice." Elena framed that letter and hung it in her new office at the Department of Veterans Affairs. The Purple Heart Medal sits in a display case next to it, right beside the Navy Cross she finally received after 20 years of waiting. But the most valuable decoration in Elena's office isn't a military medal at all. It's a photograph from her first day as VA director, showing her standing with a group of female veterans who had similarly hidden their military service to avoid discrimination. None of them are hiding anymore. This is Elena Rodriguez's story. But it's also the story of thousands of veterans who have chosen silence over recognition, anonymity over respect, civilian success over military acknowledgement. The story asks a question that every American should consider: how many heroes are working quietly beside us, their achievements hidden, their sacrifices unacknowledged, because they've learned that society isn't always ready to accept what they've accomplished. Elena Rodriguez spent 20 years proving she could succeed without relying on her military record. In the end, she learned that sometimes the most patriotic thing you can do is remind people what patriotism actually looks like. Sometimes it looks like a woman in a gray business suit, sitting calmly while a judge questions her Purple Heart. Sometimes it looks like refusing to be silenced any longer.